The phone cord is stretched to its limit, coiled around a finger, trembling just a little. On the other end of the line, a voice asks a single terrifying question. Is this Tommy? And Yahshao, standing in a small apartment in a country that still feels like a foreign planet, takes a breath and says the word that changes everything. Yes, he whispers. I am Tommy.
It's such a cinematic moment, isn't it? But this wasn't a movie. This was 1990. There was no Instagram to check a face, no caller ID to verify a name, just a young man, a heavy yellow book, and a desperate need to belong.
Wait, hold on. We have to address the elephant in the room right away. He lied. He literally assumed a dead man's, well, not a dead man's, but another guy's identity just to stay on the phone. That's bold, Ariel. Maybe a little creepy.
It's definitely a gamble, Dan. But to understand why he did it, we have to go back to the beginning. Imagine being 3 years into your life in the United States. You're Hmong. Your family has moved to this massive, sprawling country, and you feel invisible.
Isolation is a powerful motivator. In 1990, for an immigrant family, the world was as small as the apartment walls. You knew the people in your building, and that was about it. No global village, no digital forums, just the physical space you occupied.
So the yellow book becomes the lifeline. I remember those things. They were huge, like a doorstop. But using it as a dating app? That's next-level resourcefulness, or maybe just pure 90s chaos.
Exactly, Dan. Yahshao looks at this yellow book, the yellow pages, and he sees a directory of every Hmong family in the area. He decides he's going to find a girlfriend. He picks a last name that isn't his own, View, and starts at the top of the page.
It's important to note the cultural context here. In Hmong culture, last names are everything. You don't date within your own clan. So by looking for the name View, he was following a traditional rule through a very modern Western tool.
But he wasn't just looking for any View. He was looking for Mai. Why Mai? Was he looking for a specific person he'd seen at the grocery store or something?
Not at all. He was playing the odds. In many Hmong families at the time, Mai was an incredibly common name for a daughter. It was like calling a house in the 50s and asking for Mary or Linda. He knew the chances were high that a household would have a Mai.
It's a fascinating social hack. He's essentially cold-calling his way into a social circle. But think about the bravery that takes, or the loneliness, to just start at the top of a list and dial number after number.
I can barely handle it when my food delivery driver calls me to say they're outside. I can't imagine calling a total stranger and asking to speak to a daughter I've never met. What were those conversations even like?
They weren't all romantic, that's for sure. Yahshao tells us he got all kinds of answers. He'd call and say, "Can I speak to Mai?" And a mother would answer the phone. One of those old-style ones hanging on the wall with the long cord.
And sometimes the answer was heartbreaking or just awkward. One family told him, "Oh, Mai is still a baby." Another said, "Mai is disabled." And then the heavy ones, "Mai is dead."
Ouch, that's a reality check. You're looking for love and you run headfirst into a family's grief, or just the mundane reality of a toddler. It really highlights how blind this process was. He was reaching into the dark.
But he didn't stop. He kept going down the list, until finally he hits the jackpot. A mother answers, he asks for Mai, and she hands the phone over. And that's when the Tommy problem starts.
Mai gets on the line and she's skeptical. She doesn't know this Yahshao. She tells him point blank, "I don't want to talk to you, but if you're Tommy, I'll talk to you."
Wait, so Tommy was a real person? Someone she actually knew, or at least someone she was interested in?
As the conversation went on, Yahshao realized that Tommy was actually her friend's boyfriend. But Mai had a crush on him. She was waiting for a call from a Tommy, or at least hoping for one.
So Yahshao is at a crossroads. He can tell the truth and lose the connection he's worked so hard to find, or he can step into the shoes of this Tommy. He chooses the lie.
I have to jump in here. This is where it gets ethically murky. He's building a foundation on a total fabrication. If I'm Mai and I find out later that the guy I spent all night pouring my heart out to isn't even who he said he was, I'm hanging up. Permanently.
That's the risk, Dan. But they talked all night. Think about that. In 1990, a phone call was an event. You sat in one place. You listened to the tone of the voice, the pauses, the breathing. Even as Tommy, Yahshao was revealing himself through his words.
There's a psychological concept called the stranger on the train phenomenon. Sometimes it's easier to be honest with someone when there's a layer of anonymity. Even though he lied about his name, maybe he was more himself than he'd ever been.
Maybe, but he still had to meet her. He asks if he can visit the next day, and she says sure, if you're Tommy. He's walking into a trap he set for himself.
Can you imagine that walk to her house? Every step, he's probably rehearsing his apology or his explanation. He knows the moment she sees him, the Tommy mask is going to shatter.
It's the ultimate 90s cliffhanger. He shows up, she looks at him, and she's stunned. He isn't Tommy. He's just Yahshao.
And? Does she slam the door? Does she call the real Tommy? I need the resolution here, Emery.
She doesn't slam the door. They actually start talking. In person this time. And here's the twist. After they got to know each other for a while, she told him she liked him more than the real Tommy.
It's a testament to the power of personality over a name. The lie got him through the door, but it was Yahshao who made her stay. It's a messy human way to start a relationship, but in a world without Facebook, maybe messiness was the only way to find a connection.
I'm still struggling with the lie part, but I get it. If he hadn't said yes, that story ends right there on the kitchen floor. He'd still be staring at a yellow book, and she'd be waiting for a Tommy who might never call.
It makes you wonder about the yellow book itself. It was this massive archive of human potential. Every name was a story, a family, a possibility. Today, we have algorithms that do the sorting for us. We don't have to call the wrong Mai 20 times to find the right one.
But does that make this connection less valuable? Yahshao's effort, the sheer labor of calling through a phone book, created a story that he still remembers decades later. There's a weight to that.
It's definitely more memorable than we both swiped right. But man, those rejections he mentioned, calling a house and finding out a daughter had passed away, that's a lot of emotional baggage to carry just to get a date.
It really is. It shows the vulnerability of that era. You couldn't curate your image. You couldn't hide behind a profile. You were just a voice on a wire, hoping someone would listen.
And the Hmong experience in the 90s adds another layer. They were building a new community in the US. The Yellow Book wasn't just a phone directory for them. It was a way to find their own people in a sea of strangers.
I wonder if anyone still has a yellow book tucked away in a drawer somewhere. It feels like a relic from a lost civilization. If you found one today, would you even know what to do with it?
Yahshao asks that same question. Do people still use the Yellow Book? Probably not for dating. But his story ends with such a beautiful, haunting reflection. He addresses Mai directly, even now.
He says, Mai, if you hear this, I want to say thank you. He admits he lied because he knew she'd end the call otherwise. He says, If I have to lie for you, I will. It's this intense protective sentiment.
It sounds like she was his first real love in America. He calls her the most beautiful person in his life. That's a heavy statement. It makes the Tommy lie feel like a small price to pay for that kind of impact.
He even says his spirit is watching over her wherever she is. It's a story of a moment in time, 1990, that shaped the rest of his life. A time when a yellow book was a magic spell, and a lie was a key to a new world.
It's a reminder that behind every outdated piece of technology, there are thousands of stories like this. We look at a phone book and see paper. Yahshao looked at it and saw a future.
So what's the takeaway for us? Should we go find a phone book and start dialing? Or maybe just appreciate that we don't have to lie about being a guy named Tommy anymore?
Maybe the takeaway is just the bravery of reaching out. Whether it's a swipe or a phone call to a stranger, the search for connection is the same. Yahshao just had to work a little harder for his.
And he was lucky. He found the Mai he was looking for. Not every call ended in a love story, but that one did. And that's the magic of the lottery, isn't it? You only have to win once.
I guess I can forgive the Tommy lie. Just this once. Because in the end, it wasn't about Tommy. It was about Yahshao and Mai, two people finding each other in a giant, confusing new country.
It's a story that stays with you. The image of that yellow book, the long phone cord, and a young man willing to be whoever he needed to be just to hear a friendly voice. It's a 1990s tale that feels timeless.
Let's dive deeper into that 1990s setting for a second. Ariel, you mentioned the apartment. For a Hmong family only 3 years into their American journey, that apartment wasn't just a home, it was a fortress. You're navigating a language you're still learning, a culture that feels loud and fast, and a social structure that doesn't always have a place for you.
Right, and then you have this yellow book, which is basically a database of every household with a landline. It's wild to think that your name, address, and phone number were just public. Everyone had a copy of it on their doorstep. Talk about a lack of privacy.
But for Yahshao, that lack of privacy was an opportunity. He didn't see it as a privacy violation. He saw it as a directory of potential friends. He says, "No friends, you may only know the people living in the same apartment." The yellow book was his way of breaking out of those four walls.
And the choice to target the last name, View, that's a strategic move. In the Hmong clan system, there are about 18 primary clans. You are born into your father's clan, and you cannot marry or date someone within that same clan. It's a very strict taboo.
So if he's a Vang or a Thao, he's looking for a View because he knows culturally that's a safe bet. It's like a built-in filter on a dating app. Filter by, not my clan.
Exactly. But he still has to navigate the Mai factor. He mentions that most Hmong families call one of their daughters Mai. It's a term of endearment, often used for the youngest daughter or just a common name. It's like he was looking for a needle in a haystack, but he knew the haystack was full of needles.
I love the detail about the old-style phone that hung on the wall. You can almost hear the clack of the receiver when the mum picks it up. And the cord, those long, tangled cords that allowed you to walk into the hallway or a closet for a bit of privacy. That was the private mode of 1990.
And the mum is the gatekeeper. That's a huge hurdle. You have to get past the parents before you even get to talk to the person you called. That's a level of social pressure we just don't have today. If you call a house and the mum answers, you have to be polite. You have to sound respectable. You're being interviewed before you even know it.
And Yahshao clearly had the charm to get past the moms. But then he hits the Tommy wall. Mai isn't just any girl. She's a girl with a specific person on her mind. When she says, "If you are Tommy, then I will talk with you," she's setting a condition. She's basically saying, my time is valuable, and I'm only giving it to this one specific guy.
It's a classic fake-it-till-you-make-it scenario. Yahshao realizes that Yahshao isn't the name that's going to keep her on the line, so he pivots. It's a split-second decision. Yes, I am Tommy. In that moment, he's not just lying, he's taking on a persona to bridge the gap between two strangers.
But what about the real Tommy? Dan here. I'm thinking about that poor guy, or the friend's boyfriend. Yahshao finds out through the conversation that Mai likes her friend's boyfriend. That is some high school level drama right there. The tangled webs we weave.
It really is. And they talked all night. Think about the stamina that takes. To maintain a lie for hours, while also trying to build a genuine connection. He says he thrice her mind back and forth. He's navigating her thoughts, her feelings about Tommy, all while trying to show her who he is.
There's a beautiful irony in the fact that by pretending to be Tommy, he actually got her to fall for Yahshao. Because it wasn't Tommy's voice she was hearing, it wasn't Tommy's jokes or Tommy's stories, it was his. He just used Tommy's name as a mask.
Okay, but the next day, the reveal. He goes to see her. He's not a voice on a wire anymore. He's a person standing on a doorstep. She must have been so confused. You're not Tommy. Tommy has, I don't know, a different face.
He says, she can't believe I was not Tommy. It must have been a shock, but then something amazing happens. They don't just part ways, they spend time together. They get to know each other, and eventually she tells him the words every underdog wants to hear. I like you more than Tommy.
It's a victory for the real over the ideal. Tommy was an idea, a crush on someone else's boyfriend. Yahshao was a real person who put in the effort, who called her, who talked to her all night, and who showed up. Effort counts for a lot in romance.
I still can't get over the yellow book rejections he mentioned. Mai's still a baby. Mai is dead. Mai is disabled. It's such a raw look at the randomness of life. You're looking for a connection, and you keep hitting these reminders of human frailty and the passage of time.
It's like he was scrolling through a physical version of the world's most honest social media feed. No filters, no curated best lives. Just the reality of who was behind each door. It makes the lucky call, the one that reached the Mai he was looking for, feel even more like fate.
And his closing message to her, it's so poignant. Mai, if you hear this podcast, I want to say thank you. It's been over 30 years, and he's still carrying that gratitude. He admits the lie again, but with a different perspective. If I have to lie for you, I will.
It's a bit romantic, in a whatever-it-takes kind of way. He calls her the most beautiful person in his life. That's a massive tribute. It makes you wonder where she is now, if she remembers the guy who called her out of the blue and pretended to be Tommy.
I think she would. How could you forget that? It's the kind of story you tell your grandkids. Well, kids, your grandfather called me from a phone book and lied about his name, and that's how we met.
It really highlights how much the how we met story has changed. Now it's we swiped on an app or we met through mutuals on LinkedIn. There's less grit in the stories now. Yahshao's story has grit. It has the dust of the 90s and the smell of old paper.
I'm curious about the spirit watching over you part. It's a very Hmong sentiment, isn't it? That connection that transcends physical distance or even time. Even if they aren't together now, that bond remains.
Absolutely. In Hmong culture, the connection between people is often seen as something spiritual. By saying his spirit is watching over her, he's saying that the love he felt for her was real, and it's permanent, regardless of where their lives went afterward.
It's a beautiful way to end a story that started with a lie. It shows that the intention, the desire for love and connection, was the truth all along. The name Tommy was just the vehicle he used to get there.
I have to admit, I'm looking at my phone differently now. We have all this power to connect, and we mostly use it to look at memes or check the weather. Yahshao had a yellow book, and he used it to change his life.
That's the essence of it, isn't it? It's not about the tool, it's about the person using it. Whether it's a yellow book in 1990 or an iPhone in 2024, the heart is still looking for the same thing. It's looking for a my who will listen.
And maybe it's a reminder to be a bit more patient with the wrong calls in our lives. The rejections, the dead ends, the my is a baby moments. They're all just part of the process of finding the right connection.
So, what happened to the yellow book? Does it still exist? I haven't seen one on a porch in years. It feels like they just vanished overnight.
They've mostly gone digital, but they'll never have the same weight as those physical books. There was something about the sheer size of them that felt like the world was actually there, in your hands. You could feel the weight of all those thousands of people.
I think we've lost a bit of that random discovery aspect of life. Now everything is curated for us. We only see what the algorithm thinks we want to see. Yahshao had to see everything, the babies, the disabled, the deceased, before he found his my.
It's a more honest way to look at the world, in a way. It's messy and it's sad sometimes, but it's real. And when you do find that connection, it feels like a miracle because you know exactly how many no's you had to go through to get to that one yes.
Yahshao asks us at the end, how is your story in the year 90? How do you meet your first boyfriend or girlfriend? It's a call to remember our own yellow book moments. The times we took a risk, the times we reached out into the unknown.
I think about the people who met at the mall or through a letter or by accidentally calling the wrong number. Those stories are the fabric of that era. They're stories of chance and bravery.
My 90s story involves a lot of waiting by the landline for a call that might never come. There was so much waiting back then. You couldn't just text, "Where are you?" You just had to sit there and hope.
And that waiting made the connection so much sweeter when it finally happened. Yahshao's story is a perfect example of that. The effort, the risk, the lie, and finally, the reward. It's a 1990s masterpiece.
It's also a story about the immigrant experience in a way that's very subtle, but very powerful. Finding love in a new country is a way of planting roots. It's saying, I belong here, and I'm going to build a life here, one phone call at a time.
And the fact that he chose the name View, a Khmong name, shows that he was looking for a connection that was both new and familiar. He wanted someone who understood his background, but was part of his new American reality.
It's a delicate balance. And he found it. He found his my. Even if the story didn't last forever, the impact of it clearly has. 34 years later, and he's still telling the story of that yellow book.
It makes me want to go back and thank all the people who took a chance on me when I was just a voice on the other end of a line. We all have those people in our past who helped us feel less alone in a big, scary world.
Even the ones we lied to, just kidding. But seriously, it's a beautiful reflection. Yahshao's spirit watching over my. That's the kind of closure we all hope for with our first loves.
It really is. It's a story of gratitude. Gratitude for a yellow book, for a mother who handed over the phone, and for a girl named Mai, who was willing to listen to a guy who said his name was Tommy.
And maybe somewhere out there, Mai is listening to this podcast and smiling, remembering the day she met the guy who was better than Tommy.
I hope so. That would be the perfect ending to this 90s tale. From a yellow book to a podcast, the medium changes, but the story of human connection remains the same.
Let's take a moment to really think about the logistics of Yahshao's quest. He's in his third year in the U.S. By 1990, the Hmong community had established significant enclaves in places like Minnesota, Wisconsin, and California. The Yellow Book he was looking at was likely thick with Hmong surnames. It wasn't just a few pages, it was a testament to a whole people resettling.
That's a great point, Ariel. The surname View is one of the major Hmong clans. In a city with a large Hmong population, you could have hundreds of views listed. He wasn't just making 5 or 10 calls, he was likely making dozens, maybe even over a period of weeks. The sheer persistence is what strikes me.
And think about the rejection rate. We talk about ghosting today, but imagine being told Mai is dead by a stranger. That's not just a no, that's a heavy emotional blow. You're trying to find a girlfriend, and instead you're accidentally stumbling into a family's tragedy. Most people would have stopped after the first one of those.
But Yahshao says he was lucky. He doesn't focus on the rejections, he focuses on the one that worked. It's a very optimistic way of looking at a pretty grueling process. He calls it the Yellow Book Lottery, and he's right. It was a game of chance where the stakes were his own happiness.
The detail about the old-style phone on the wall is so evocative. In 1990, the phone was often in a central location, the kitchen or the hallway. There was no private place to talk. If you were Mai and you were talking to this Tommy, your mum or your siblings were probably just a few feet away, listening to every word.
That adds a whole other layer to the Tommy lie. He's not just lying to Mai, he's potentially lying to her whole family. If the mum thinks he's Tommy, he has to keep that act up with her too. Oh, hello, Mrs. View, it's Tommy again. The pressure must have been immense.
And yet, he says, they talked for that night. One long, continuous conversation. There's something about the 1990s phone call that allowed for a deep, focused connection that we struggle with now. You weren't multitasking. You weren't scrolling through other apps. You were just there, in the voice.
It's what we call high-bandwidth communication, even though the technology was low bandwidth. You're picking up on every inflection, every hesitation. Yahshao says he thrice her mind back and forth. He's learning her rhythms, her likes, her dislikes. He's becoming the person she wants to talk to, regardless of his name.
But the Tommy thing. It's such a 90s rom-com trope, right? The mistaken identity that leads to true love. But in real life, it's so much riskier. He says Mai liked Tommy, but Tommy was her friend's boyfriend, so Mai was already in a complicated emotional place. She was looking for the distraction maybe, and Yahshao provided it.
And then the next day, the physical meeting. This is the moment of truth. He doesn't say how he got there. Did he walk? Did he take a bus? But he showed up. In 1990, showing up was the ultimate proof of intent. You couldn't just send a location. You had to find the house, knock on the door, and face the consequences.
The fact that she didn't just turn him away is the most interesting part of the story to me. It suggests that the connection they made on the phone was strong enough to survive the shock of the lie. She saw the person behind the voice, and she liked him more than the guy she thought he was.
It's a total subversion of expectations. You'd think the lie would be the deal breaker, but instead it became a footnote. Oh, by the way, I'm not Tommy. That's okay, you're better. It's like a fairy tale, but with more corded phones and yellow paper.
Yahshao's reflection at the end is what really elevates the story for me. He's not just telling a funny anecdote about his youth. He's sending a message into the ether. Mai, if you hear this, thank you. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated gratitude for a person who changed his life.
And that line, "If I have to lie for you, I will, that what I did." It sounds almost like a vow. It's not an apology for the lie, it's an explanation of its necessity. He saw a path to her and he took it, even if it meant taking a detour through a different name.
It's a very different world now. If someone lied about their name on a dating app today, we'd call it catfishing and report them. But in 1990, in the context of a new immigrant trying to find his way, it feels more like survival, or at least a desperate reach for human warmth.
I think that's a fair way to put it. It was a different era with different rules. The Yellow Book was a wild frontier, and Yahshao was one of its pioneers. He navigated the My Lottery and came out with a prize that he still cherishes.
It's a story that makes you wonder about all the other names in that book. How many other love stories started with a random call? How many friendships? How many lives were changed by a finger tracing a list of names under a kitchen light?
It's a lot to think about. I might actually go look for a phone book now, just to see what it feels like to hold that much potential in my hands. Although I'll probably skip the part where I pretend to be a guy named Tommy.
Probably a good idea, Dan. But the spirit of Yahshao's story, the willingness to take a chance, to be vulnerable, and to reach out to a stranger, that's something we could all use a little more of, regardless of the year.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful reminder that even in the most isolated times, connection is possible if you're willing to look for it. Even if you have to look for it in a giant yellow book.
And even if you have to deal with a few "my is a baby" calls along the way, it's all part of the journey.
Yahshao, thank you for sharing this. It's a piece of history, a piece of culture, and a whole lot of heart. Wherever Mai is, we hope she's doing well, and we hope she knows she's still the most beautiful person in someone's story.
It's funny, isn't it? How a simple object like a phone book can become the center of such a profound memory. It's not about the paper or the ink, it's about what it represented, a doorway to the rest of the world.
I'm still stuck on the "spirit watching over you" line. It's so powerful. It suggests that even when people move on, the love they shared doesn't just vanish. It stays in the atmosphere, like a signal that's still being broadcast.
That's a beautiful way to put it, Dan. A signal that's still being broadcast. Just like this podcast, reaching out to whoever might be listening, carrying a story from 1990 into the present day.
It's the ultimate evolution of the Yellow Book. We're still just people looking for other people, trying to find a name that resonates, trying to find a voice that makes us feel at home.
Well, I'm glad we found this story. It's definitely more interesting than anything I found on my phone today. No offense to my phone.
None taken, I'm sure. Let's leave it there. A young man, a yellow book, a lie named Tommy, and a love named Mai. A 1990s story for the ages.
And a reminder to all of us, sometimes the best connections are the ones you have to work for, even if you have to dial a few wrong numbers first.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, keep an eye out for any yellow books you see in the wild. You never know whose story might be inside.
Let's pivot for a second and talk about the cultural resonance of this story within the Hmong community. Emery, you mentioned the clan system, but there's also the element of the first-generation experience. Yahshao and his family were part of a massive wave of Hmong refugees who came to the U.S. after the secret war in Laos. By 1990, they were still very much in the adaptation phase.
That's such a crucial point. For many Hmong families, the US was a place of safety, but it was also a place of profound cultural shock. The social structures that worked in the mountains of Laos, where everyone knew everyone and your clan was your safety net, didn't exist in a suburban apartment complex. The Yellow Book was a way to rebuild that net.
So when Yahshao is calling these views, he's not just looking for a date. He's looking for a piece of his own culture in a place that feels very not Hmong. It's a search for identity as much as it is for romance.
And the name Mai itself, it's so evocative. In Hmong, it can mean girl or daughter, but it's also a common name. It's a word that sounds like home. When he says he asked for Mai, he was asking for a connection to his own community.
I think about the mothers who answered those phones. They were the gatekeepers of the culture. They were the ones making sure their daughters were dating within the right clans, maintaining the traditions even in this new, strange land. Yahshao getting past those mothers is a testament to his respect for those traditions, even if he was using a fake name.
The Tommy name choice is interesting too. Tommy sounds very American, doesn't it? It's a name that suggests assimilation, or at least a foot in both worlds. Maybe that's why Mai was so drawn to it. It represented a certain kind of new world cool.
That's a great observation, Dan. By calling himself Tommy, Yahshao was tapping into that desire for a modern identity. But when they finally met, it was the Yahshao part, the real, authentic person that she actually connected with. It's a beautiful metaphor for the immigrant experience. You might start with a Tommy mask, but your true self is what matters.
And let's not forget the spirit part again. In Hmong spirituality, the soul is a complex thing. The idea of a spirit watching over someone is a way of saying that the connection is sacred. It's not just a memory, it's a living presence. That's a very deep way to think about a first girlfriend.
It makes me think about how we treat our own memories. Do we see them as spirits that watch over us, or just as data points in our past? Yahshao's approach feels so much richer. It gives his past a sense of purpose and continuity.
It really does. And his question to the audience, how is your story in the year 90? It's an invitation to find that same richness in our own lives. To look back at the yellow books of our own pasts and see the stories they contain.
I wonder how many people listening right now are thinking about their first love, their first big risk, their first time feeling like a stranger in a new place. Yahshao's story is a mirror for all of those experiences.
I'm definitely thinking about mine. It didn't involve a yellow book, but it did involve a lot of awkwardness and a very poorly timed lie. I think we've all been Tommy at some point, trying to be someone else just to get a foot in the door.
We definitely have. And hopefully, we all found someone like Mai who could see past the name and like us for who we actually were. That's the real lottery win, isn't it?
It truly is. The win isn't getting the call right. It's finding the person who doesn't care if you got it wrong.
Well, I'm sold. I'm officially a fan of Yahshao and his 1990s Yellow Book adventures. It's the kind of story that makes you feel a little better about the world, even with all its wrong numbers.
Me too, Dan. Me too. And on that note, let's wrap this up. To Yahshao, to Mai, and to all the Tommies out there trying to find their way, thanks for listening.
And remember, the next time you see an old phone book, don't just throw it away. It might be someone's map to a whole new life.
Or at least a very interesting conversation. See you next time.
Wait, before we go, I just had one more thought. Yahshao mentioned that people used the yellow book every day like today we use Facebook. That's such a powerful analogy. It was the original social network. You'd browse it, you'd look up names, you'd see who lived where. It was how you understood the who's who of your local world.
It's true. And just like Facebook, it was full of profiles. Except back then, a profile was just a name and a number. You had to do all the work to fill in the rest. You had to call, you had to visit, you had to engage. There was no passive scrolling in the yellow book.
That's the difference, isn't it? We consume social media now. Yahshao participated in the yellow book. He was an active user in the truest sense of the word. He was out there making things happen, not just waiting for them to appear in his feed.
And that participation led to a story he's still telling 34 years later. I wonder if we'll be telling stories about our favorite Instagram posts in 2058? Probably not. But we'll definitely still be telling stories about the people we met and the risks we took.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, the technology is just the medium. The message is always the same. I'm here. Are you there? Can we talk?
And sometimes the answer is, yes, I'm Tommy. And that's enough to start a whole new chapter.
All right, now we're really done. Thanks again, everyone. Keep those phone cords long and your hearts open.
And maybe keep a spare name handy, just in case.
Dan, don't encourage them. But yeah, keep reaching out. Bye.